Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome. And I know it's a little bit early if you're listening to this the day it releases, but have a wonderful and beautiful Thanksgiving. I know you're not able to spend it with your entire family because of the pandemic, but still enjoy that day and just be thankful for all that you have. I know I will. It'll be kind of weird because I won't be going to Chicago this year for Thanksgiving or Christmas. So don't get to see the fam, wonk wonk. But I know it's for the best and I will see them in 2021. Anyway, I have an amazing guest today. But before I get into what the episode is about, just know that I have created a post called Nache's Favorite Things. It's my holiday gift guide. I figured if Oprah can have a favorite thing, so can I. I have some of my favorite things of all time on there. Just things either that I own. A lot of them aren't things that I own yet, but I have them on my Pinterest or Instagram to buy list because I really want them. Because normally I put those types of things on my to buy in order to prevent me from spending like crazy. But I only have the best things in the to buy list, and I have shared them with you because I think they would make amazing gifts. So go over and check that out when you get a chance. You could just go to nachesnow.com/2020 holiday. Okay, let's chat about Alana. Alana is back from Etta and Billie. She has a skincare line and I absolutely love it. It's funny, I'm in the DC area for those of you all who know, and there are several stores that carry her line in this area, even though she's in California. And so she does a really good job at making sure that her products get all across the US. But in this episode today, we just discuss how the pandemic affected her. She ended up deciding to move from San Francisco, Cali to Ventura, California. We talk about all the things that go into that, reestablishing her business connections while also overcoming supply chain issues, her having to do a risk assessment to send her son to childcare. I mean, we just talk about all the things she's been up to. And then we also just talk about communicating with customers, tough personnel decisions that she had to make during COVID, and then just staying mentally afloat during this time, just some tips. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. Just a few housekeeping items. If you'd love to support the podcast, please head on over to NacheSnow.com. You can click the shop button and it'll take you over to my shop where you can support the podcast by either buying t-shirts, the Life Cleanse journal, or some other digital journals. So if you want to support, please go over there. You can also buy me a cup of coffee, which is located at the bottom right of the website. Also, if you end up loving this episode, please share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And I want to say thank you. This is my thanks to all of you guys who have left a review. I really appreciate the kind words. You guys just leaving me 5 stars, I'm like, yeah. But when you take the time to leave a kind comment, also, that really just warms my heart. Just to read a few from Kali Williams. Really enjoy the guest on the show and Nache's interview style. The show explores the various degrees of art and business with artists with different background. It's fun to listen to their journeys and see how everyone finds their fit. Thank you for that nice review, Kali. Jay Murney writes, I want to be like Nache when I grow up. And then in quotations she puts, and I think we're about the same age. She's just so positive in a realistic way. Just love her. Jay Murney, thank you. So appreciated. That was really cool to read that. Four Rows BRT wrote so many great conversations and valuable takeaways. Thank you. And I'll read one more from Bari Hambry or Hamby, sorry. And she writes, "You have met me exactly where I need to be met. Your knowledge and encouragement ignite my fire to dream bigger and work harder. I'm so impressed with your penchant for continuing building upon your knowledge base and then taking action. Thank you so much for your generosity. XO Bari." That's so sweet. It read like a poem. That's so kind of you. And there's so many others that are really amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for rating me. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. It helps the podcast get discovered. So that simple, small act is huge for me. So I just want to say I appreciate you. All right. So let's get started. Of course, the show notes for this page is over at nachesnow.com/119. Let's do this. Hello, Alana. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be back.
Yes. And for those of you guys listening, you all enjoyed her first episode, 84, which was From Hobby to Business, How to Start a Natural Skincare Line. You all loved it, ate it up. And so now I am bringing her back. I would say post COVID, but we're not post COVID. We're still in the midst of COVID. But this is September, and I just wanted to do a little check in and find out how she was doing and how COVID impacted her business. So, Alana, enough of me talking. What's going on?
Well, we have had a lot of changes. Let me just tell you. I'll do an overarching macro kind of changes. So we've moved locations. We are no longer in San Francisco. We are now in Ventura. So that's a pretty massive change, which we made in the middle of COVID.
I know, because it was funny because I think I had emailed you and you were like, I'm actually in the middle of moving. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Now, let me just, for anyone who's considering it, because I'm sure what I would love to do is move in the middle of a pandemic. I'm just going to tell you don't. If you can help it, try not to.
So what prompted the move? That's a big, Ventura's a little different.
It's very different. It's very different. It was a couple of things. It's something I had been considering. My husband and I had lived in San Francisco for, oh my gosh, almost 16 years. I started the business there in 2009. So we'd been there a really long time. And then we had a child in 2018. And it's a lot to be doing all of those things simultaneously in a city that is wonderful and beautiful and terribly expensive. And we had been considering it and talking about moving closer to family. Both of our families, well, parts of both of our families live in Southern California. We'd been talking back and forth about it for a while and not sure quite what to do. And then, gosh, March 15th? When was the lockdown? March 15th?
That was like, it was pretty right. Yeah, it was like that day.
I think I got the notification and was in pure shock on March 15th that we would have to basically close our doors by midnight. I think it was that night. And it was kind of like, what? Okay. And not knowing how long it was going to go, but knowing that it was going to be longer than the projected, I think 4 weeks is what they had. I was just like, I don't know what business is going to be like. I don't know how I'm going to take care of my employees. I don't know how to make this happen. So I made the incredibly challenging decision of laying off all my employees, but hoping that they would then be able to collect at least unemployment so that they'd be okay financially, and hoping that once we got to just sort of see what happened, to see if I'd be able to bring them back. And then I basically went from one day running a business to the next day running a business and also being a full-time mom, uh, mom caregiver at home of a very active toddler. And probably about 3 weeks later, maybe 4 weeks, maybe not, maybe it was a 1 week, maybe it was the next day. I don't know. I thought, you know what? This is pretty damn hard. I think I need some help. And it was not knowing all the effects of the virus, not knowing how long the quarantine was going to be, if we were to ever be able to have real childcare again. Just so many factors. It really sort of pushed us to move closer to family because we're like, then we have help. It was kind of like, normally I lived in San Francisco for a long time. I had plenty of friends and wonderful support there. We could have had help, but in a pandemic, you can't just ask, like, I can't just ask my best friend to come over.
Yeah. It's a little awkward, right? Like
Yeah.
family, there's like that obligation there. They're like, okay, we got you.
Yeah.
Friends are like, well, oh.
Right, exactly. And it's like, and then you're also, you're asking somebody to take a risk, and then you're asking yourself to take a risk, and
Right.
it just, and it was just that, and then the pressure of still having, we still had all the expenses. I will say, my landlords were incredibly gracious and trying to be super supportive of all the artists in my building, and I am so grateful for them because it was really hard. But it was kind of just like, okay, well, if this goes on for, if we have to be in quarantine for 4 months, 6 months, can we like make it mentally, monetarily, whatever? And it was,
Mm.
I'm not sure.
Now let
Not
me ask
sure
you a
about that.
question. Right, for the listeners out there, the space that you were in, were you primarily using it where just to make the products, or were you like making the products there, also selling the products and all of that good stuff?
So we were making the products there, and then people couldn't physically come and purchase. Like they could, but it was like this whole. You had to set up a time and all this stuff because it was. We were in like a big artist collective building, so it wasn't open to the public.
Mm.
We ran all of our shipping out of there. We made all of our product, ran the business out of there. So there was also that because the building was closed
Right.
ostensibly, right? Not technically, I was not allowed to be in it
Oh
for a little while.
wow. So
And then
even
it was sort of
whoa.
like, yeah, and then could be there for certain periods of time. It was okay. It was like a real struggle. Also, because I was at that time, then let's say, I think it must have been at the, let's say, 5 week mark, maybe. I don't know. Time's a little blurry from then. I was I was in there making product and packing orders. I will say this: our online business just went crazy. It just went wild. So many people came out to support us, and it was so wonderful. And that meant that I had to become both maker, shipper, and all the other
Yeah, because
jobs.
that's what I was gonna say. Because you didn't have that help you
Yeah.
had before, how are you able to keep up with increased numbers?
Honestly, I couldn't. I had to really, I had to basically prepare customers for extended lead times. It would take me sometimes 7 to 10 days to ship something out because I could only go into the studio when my son was napping
Mm,
or when he was asleep at night. And I wasn't
mm.
technically supposed to go into the building
Anyway,
after in that. So it was, I wasn't really sneaking. I guess I was sneaking. Okay. Sorry, building.
but no, that
Building.
puts you in like this weird situation because you technically can't hire anybody to go back and work on things in a building that you're not supposed to be. So
Right.
you're in this impossible situation where you do have more orders coming in, but even though you're not really selling out of that building, which was weird that they closed it down because it wasn't like you
Yeah.
were a brick and mortar, you were just making stuff.
Yeah, I think they were trying because it was multi-unit. I think they were trying to in the very like first couple days. It was just a couple days that I think that we weren't supposed to go in. But then it was
Okay.
like very reduced hours. And they tried to allow for us to go back in, but the other thing was technically if you were following the quarantine mandate, you like as a business, you were not supposed to go in. I think it was like food businesses it was essential businesses. And so technically we were riding the line of essential since we're manufacturing soap.
Yeah, because I was like, we need soap.
Right. So like I was riding that line of being an essential business and being able to be open, but in the beginning they didn't even have that. I wasn't considered an essential business, I think. I can't remember exactly when we got word that I technically could be back in, but and here's the thing is I don't fault anybody. Everybody was trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
handle a situation that there's no like protocol for. And so it was a lot. It was really intense and it was very long days and very it was incredibly challenging. It was so challenging. And I'm not someone that's I would say great at asking for help, but I definitely needed help during that time, but I couldn't. Like who was like to
Right.
come and help me,
It's like,
you know?
hey, right. Can you help me ship,
Right. It's like,
package and ship
yeah, we're
some
not
orders
exactly
here?
sure what's going to happen here, but yeah. So it was all these things happening at one time that was really challenging. So it was, yeah, it was a pretty intense time. And then we moved.
Yeah, so it's like March 15th, you get this, hey, cease and desist almost because we've
Yeah.
got to figure all the things out, figure who's essential, not essential, all of that good stuff. So, how long from March 15th to whenever did it take you to say, like, you know what, I'm done, we're moving?
Gosh, it was probably maybe 5 weeks.
Oh, wow. I mean,
It
that's
wasn't it wasn't long.
relatively,
And like
yeah,
we had been
fast.
talking about it, right? It wasn't like a had never been on the table before. It had been on the table, but it was like this thing where we went, we I have got to do this because I was like, what's going to happen? What is going to happen if these orders stop coming in, or what's going to happen if the quarantine gets more intense? Like I need to be able to have some other support structures in place to be able to keep doing this. It's just
Yeah.
not. It just didn't feel viable to stay and have to pay the overhead and all the things that come with owning a business and having a physical space. I have a new space, so I'm still paying overhead, but it's significantly cheaper
Yeah.
than our previous. It was like in some ways, I thought of it as like a reset. So there's like positive pieces about it, but then it was
Hmm.
also almost like starting over, which felt really intense and heavy, And I think it's just straddling both of those.
And how did that look too? Because so once you made that decision, did you all decide did you have to sell something or buy
Mm.
something, or did you rent in San Francisco and then decide to rent there? And then even with the business, right? Did you like just kind of put a sign up on the business? Hey, we'll not be processing orders from X date to X date. There's so many moving parts with this.
Oh, it's wild. It really is. So we rented our apartment in San Francisco. So knowing that we were making this sort of like big change in a very uncertain time,
Mm,
we moved in with my parents.
smart.
And then, because then it was kind of like, well, then we have help with the kid if something happens. And
Yeah.
then now we can have at least a little breathing room to sort of figure out how to reset things up here.
It
It's becoming
doesn't
a bit
force you to
like
make a commitment to at least in a
no,
rush and only to find out like maybe it's
that's
really not where you
not.
want to be and then you're like stuck for a year.
Yes. And I think that was like a big one of my big things is I was like, it's really hard to make like a big commitment like that when everything
Mhm.
is swirling around you. It's like so up
Mhm.
in the air. It's, I don't want to let go of all my options, but at some point
Right.
you're forced. Like, with my business, there was no way for me to not have a space to move it into at this point with all the things and the stuff and that we have set up. And I am very lucky that I have incredibly supportive and gracious customers that I tried to give them as much heads up as I could.
Mm.
And then I said, hey, orders placed after this date probably aren't going to ship for another month. Okay,
Okay,
thank
at
you.
least it's transparent. It's like,
Right. I
you
tried
know,
to
my
be,
friends.
yeah, I tried to be really clear with everybody, remind people. We sent a lot of reminders right before we actually closed down to move. And then while we were moving and while we were really resetting up, we were making sure to post on social and remind people like, hey, you can still order, please do, but
You
we
just
won't
won't
be
get it for a
shipping your
while.
items for another couple weeks. And my goal was to get the everything set up so I could actually beat my projected shipping restart of the shipping date. And I believe we actually were able to do that, which is really great. But it's a lot. It's a lot to think about, right? Like it's not only are you moving your personal life and having to reset it up somewhere, you're also moving your business life and like reestablishing that. And then there's so much communication that needs to be handled, and then reestablishing a my business community here during a pandemic,
Hmm.
which by the way
Oh,
is really
yeah.
hard. Shock of all shocks.
Right. But you have a lot of retailers you deal with that's all over the US too, which is
Yes.
nice. Because I'm like, I'm
Yes.
in the DC area and I go into a shop and I'm like, oh my God, I know the person that makes this.
Right, and it feels really good to know that. It really does. Oh my gosh, I do the same thing when I go and I'm like, oh, that's my friend. Look at their stuff. Yeah, I'm really lucky. The hard part is that our business, the majority of my business prior was wholesale. And
Mm.
so with the pandemic and quarantines and everything, we lost a lot of our wholesale business because
Oh,
just stores
yeah.
weren't open or they didn't know either. Understandably, you're not going to be placing order after order when you're like, am I going to be able to sell this? Am I going to be able to open my door? Is anybody going to come even if I do open my door? Like,
Yeah.
what's happening? We've really had to, I'm trying not to use the word pivot, but we've really had to change
Just
course.
shift a little, shift just a bit.
And focus more on direct to consumer and e-commerce. And in some ways, that's what I've been wanting to do.
Mm.
We were talking about a little bit before how like the pandemic really kind of made helps make some help you make some decisions that maybe you've been thinking about or push you towards something or clarify something. And the pandemic really forced us to really put a lot more energy and effort into e-commerce. And I'm not sad
Mm.
about that at all. I think it's great and it's been wonderful. It's just it's a lot of things, and I am I am thankful though that I do have my business community in the Bay Area. I still chat with them. It's not like I'm like lost in a sea of
Right.
no.
You have the
Just it's different. Like
connections.
I'm the kind of person that really likes to be with people in person. Like
Yeah.
that's where I like to connect with people. And so trying to build community here virtually is
Yeah.
it's been very hard for me because it's just not my natural like I really have to push myself to do it and I have not been doing a very good job of that. Like,
Did you find another studio space or did you set it up in like the basement of your parents' house or like how did
good
all that
question.
work? Because that's like a lot of
Well,
stuff, right?
it is a lot
Your
of stuff. And thankfully, I was able to find a space. And thankfully, my parents were down here and able to look at spaces for me
yeah.
because otherwise, how was I going to do that? And so that was really nice. And luckily, we found something. I was thinking about all sorts of stuff. Like maybe I have to put some stuff in storage and then figure out if I can keep some stuff and run it out of my parents' house. I didn't tell them that, by the way. That was just a backup plan, just in case. Like, but yeah, it is a lot to manage. But I knew with the quantity of stuff that I have collected over the years, and that that finding a space was really a big priority, and I think that's also why we put our energy there first instead of trying to find a home. Um,
So so
because
question.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna ask a question because even once you, let's say you got settled, because of course it takes some time to unpack all the things and then make it like a space where you're like, okay, I can start putting things out again. How were you able by yourself, or did you get help to get all those orders out once you were finally settled?
So what is very lucky about this is that my parents are retired.
Oh, sweet. It's like mom, dad.
Dad,
Okay, this
and
is
they
the
still,
process.
yes,
Like,
yeah. And so they've still been helping. And in fact, if anyone places an order, most likely my mom is writing you a note, and her handwriting is very nice.
oh my God, you should have like little stickers that go in the
I,
package packed by mom.
I should do that. That's a
You
good
should.
idea. It's a really good idea. So luckily they've been able to step in and help. And because it's really hard to do all the things to get, like you're saying, to get yourself reset up, reconfigured, do all the communication with your customers, make the product, pack the product. It's a lot. There are so many moving parts to
Hmm.
a manufacturing business, and that's essentially what a skincare, body care business is, or a manufacturing business. If you get down to the nuts and bolts, that it's a lot to do. It's hard to do on your own if you're at when you're at a certain place or you're getting all these orders. It's almost nearly impossible unless you can never sleep, which that's not me. So
Mm.
I have to sleep. So I can't run myself that way. So yeah, I feel very fortunate actually to be able to have their help right now. And luckily business is at a point where I could hire somebody. So I hired
Oh,
somebody. Gosh,
good.
I think he's been it's been over a month now. But that's also weird having to hire somebody during this time where I
All
basically had to
right.
conduct interviews virtually when I usually like to have people physically in the space to talk to them about stuff. And so there's a lot of this is such a year of learning for me.
Hmm. Oh, we talked
Learning
about
and
it. I mean, it's a year.
here. It's a learning and relearning. And I think a lot of those things are great and some of those things are hard and but it's so there's been a lot happening at Etta and
I
Billie since
see.
we talked.
Now, the person that you hired, did you hire them to like really just help you with the online stuff, or was it to like literally help you with making and packing and all the good stuff?
It's helping with the making and
Mm.
packing. There was, and before I was able to find him, I was doing almost all those things, minus maybe
Ugh,
shipping some of the
that's a
orders on my
lot.
own, and it's a lot, especially when you're also still trying to do all the other things in a business, like the marketing and the strategy and the. It's just like all these things, and it was just it
Oh, and
felt.
keeping a toddler like entertained and like
There's that also. There was that also. We were really lucky that we were finally able to find child help care. It's basically
nice.
daycare that feels very safe. They're taking things very seriously, really small class sizes. That's also a risk that we're taking.
But the
There's,
thing is, I've, talked to some folks that I know, and they've found like some places that, knock on wood, haven't had any issues. They have really small settings of 4 or 5 children, and it's been like a lifesaver for them so they can run their business or go back to their career or whatever it is. So it's a kind of like a weird thing. It's like you need it so you can actually continue to
yeah,
work and pay the
yeah.
bills too. So it's, yeah.
I think there's this sort of also societal pressure, right? That it is a hard decision to have to make. I think most of my friends that have been able to put their kids back into care of some variety, they're like you're all of a sudden in this massive amount of risk assessment. But you also know that if you don't do it, then you can't necessarily do some of the other things. Like you have to let go of something,
Mm,
right? Like
yeah.
it's just it is not possible to do it all and stay
Mm-mm.
sane. I think personally,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
there's no. Otherwise, you're just going to be again working 24 hours if you're doing kid stuff,
Yeah.
doing life, trying to do your own life, and then trying to have a job or run a business or whatever it is. And especially it depends on how your business is set up, right? Some businesses you don't necessarily need to be physically present or physically making something. If you do, you can't really have a toddler running around, let me tell you. I've let him in the studio before And he has like a sixth sense for where the glass items are.
Oh
He's
goodness.
he's
It's
like,
like
ooh,
and you're like, no, 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 no. Don't touch
anything but that.
anything.
So yeah, I feel very fortunate to have all the help and be in a more settled space in a very unsettled time, even if things are still unsettled. It's not like I know what's
No.
going to happen.
Right. I
It's
mean,
just
we
that
don't
at least
know.
some of the things feel like they're reestablished and we're moving in the right direction and have that going. But yeah, this
Well,
is a tough time to be having a small business. Let me just tell you.
it's insane. Were you able to keep everything in your store or did you have to discontinue some items?
So we're facing that issue now because there's the other part of it, and this is getting a little into the nitty gritty. There are massive supply chain issues, massive. And
Mm.
it's not necessarily always with raw materials. It might be that there's shipping delays
Mm.
or that there are some manufacturing delays. Like right now, trying to get a pump, mm-mm, it is like nearly impossible. Everyone across the United States is sold out. You have to be on a list from like whenever ago. It is
Wow.
a justice, and it's something that obviously many businesses are dealing with this at the same time. It's just we've never dealt with it. So I keep having to put things on back order, which I really dislike doing. But I don't have a choice because if I don't have the thing, I can't sell the thing without the other thing. And then the other thing is that I was saying like shipping delays, like unfortunately with the fires happening all up and down the West Coast right now, another thing we're facing is some businesses are having to close because the fires and the air quality is so bad that
Oh,
they, right?
right.
You can't have FedEx and UPS drivers out. They can't be picking things up. You can't have employees in packing orders. So things are just like sitting and people are having to be almost like back in another quarantine in a weird way for some businesses. So I'm laughing because if I didn't laugh, I would cry. But
No, I mean, because it's all these little, we talked about it a little bit before I started recording. It really is this Black Swan event. It's who would have thunk it? Like when everybody was like, Happy New Year! Yay, 2020! No one anticipated all the things were going to happen that happened. And also, like, how much it would affect all the things like
yes,
shipping, like getting things from overseas, like doing whatever, right? Even let's say if you really needed to hire 4 or 5 more people and everybody is required to wear a mask, just getting a mask for the people
right.
that need to work with you, like all of these little things that everybody, we all took for granted, all of a sudden we're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is a problem.
Right.
Like,
Yes. And there's also the things to think about when you have multiple people in a space at the same time. How are you going to keep everybody safe?
right.
All of these things. And it just so happens, of course, a lot of the PPE is also stuff we would normally use in manufacturing to keep a clean manufacturing environment. So it's also just challenging because it's some stuff we'd already needed, but it's harder to get it, or it's the prices have jacked up, or whatever it is. It's an ever changing, it's a lot of balls up in the air that might shift location at any moment. You just
Right.
have to be as prepared as you can be for that situation. So
And the
we have a,
fires too. Who would have
yeah,
thunk it? Like,
I know,
okay,
I
we're gonna
know,
throw some fires in there too.
I
I mean,
know.
it's just, yeah, California. I feel like is getting a like a double whammy, and even some places that have been hit by hurricanes. I feel like it's just 2020 just keeps coming with stuff, like
It
throwing
really,
things at us.
it really does. I know. I think it right, was it Laura, and I was just like, really, could we all maybe just have a little break
Just
here?
a
We don't.
little tiny
Could you, yeah,
break.
just simmer down on those natural disaster type situations.
Right? I know. It's crazy because in my little Apple weather app, I always have all my favorite places. I love San Francisco. So I have San Francisco and New York and Maui and Jamaica and so forth. And I'm like looking in this one particular app the other day and it gives the air quality. And it had San Francisco and it's unhealthy, 175 or something like whatever that thing was. And I was just like, oh my goodness, it's like they just got their COVID numbers down, and now they probably can barely get the proper mask, so they're not breathing in
Mhm.
all of these toxins. And if you happen to be a business owner too, how do you make all of that work? How do you continue to stay afloat? It's just, yeah, these are
Yeah.
some interesting times.
It really is. It's like gauntlets thrown, and you have to just okay, do the best,
Right.
whatever you can. But it's so true. Air quality to the point where people had to close their businesses. They couldn't be open. Like you can't be open if the air quality. And who's going to come? Nobody.
Right.
So
Right.
it was like I guess a moot point in some way. But yeah, it is. It's a lot, and exactly harder to get certain things, and it's
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. We went off like on a total
no, I know
tangent, but
it is a
but
lot to
yeah.
it's a lot to juggle, and it's more to juggle, I think, than ever before.
So for you, just taking all that into account, just all the things that are happening in the world, they're literally affecting how you're being able to source different materials,
Yes.
right? So, dang, okay.
Yeah.
So,
So
ooh,
we hope not to have to get rid of stuff, but there is a strong possibility, or we'll have to completely change packaging to be able to keep providing a product. It's going to
mm,
potentially require, complete rethought on the whole thing. And so there's also those factors because it's like, man, who knows how long this will be? And if I can't get a pump, how am I going to sell my hand wash? How is that
yeah.
going to get my hand wash? They can't pump it out. Anyway,
You're like,
so
this is an essential piece
an
to the
essential piece,
bottle.
but again, it's an essential, which is why the pumps are hard to come by. I'm not the only one who's after them. So,
Wow.
and again, I'm not the only one who's facing these. Different people are facing different, depending on their industry. I've heard of some people like their manufacturers aren't manufacturing as much of a certain product, so they can't even, whatever order they would have gotten, they've had to try and now find a new manufacturer, and then they have to go through that whole process. Yeah, it's just a bunch, a kind of, again, it's new challenges or old challenges that you maybe thought you had sorted out, but are back once again to kind of refigure it out and I guess keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. And then for you, we touched on it a little bit earlier because of so many brick and mortar stores just not being able to open their doors yet. And even if they have opened their doors, they might only be purchasing very small amounts of things and maybe not even from the vendors that they used to purchase from. And so I know you said you are focusing on more direct to consumer. And so have you been able to, are you still figuring out ways to make up that wholesale income, or have you gotten there where you've been able to market enough to make sure you're still able to bring in enough money to help sustain the business?
Yeah, we it has not quite made up for the loss in wholesale, but it's getting closer.
Oh,
And that
yay.
is really amazing. Yeah, it is. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just pre-holiday and people are feeling a little more positive. Our wholesale business has picked up, but
Mm,
I don't anticipate it to be like a typical holiday for us. Where there were no trade shows, or there were trade shows. They're virtual. One of my design groups, we're doing a virtual one next week. It's not the same, and it's hard for some people. Ours is a physical
yeah.
product with smell. And so
Right.
if you like, it's hard enough to capture someone's attention there, and then you're asking someone to put it in their shop and deal with all of that. So I'm trying to keep all of my expectations very, what I like to say, cautiously optimistic or very realistic.
Mm, yeah. You just have to go with the flow and see what works and what doesn't work and shift when you need to and, go from there. But I just love your story because I had so many twists and turns, right? You had to figure out what to do. Unfortunately, you had that really hard, which I can't even, imagine like having to lay off your crew. Like that's a hard conversation to have with
It was,
people.
yeah, honestly, it was awful. I cried. I think each time I told each person,
Yeah.
and then I and cried some more. I've never had to do that, and we're a team. We care about each other. We're a little family, and so it's really, even though I knew it was the best thing to do ultimately for everybody.
Yeah.
But it was really awful. It's definitely one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's just like dealing with that and then saying, okay, you know what? We do need to make this move for our family and it makes sense for the business, it makes sense for all the things. And actually moving in the middle of a pandemic, that's like a whole other ball of wax. I don't even know if you guys found movers or what have you or had to move yourself, but that in itself is a feat. And then just getting all set up and starting again, starting in a new community, figuring out how to make it work, making sure you don't have too many angry customers because even though you communicate, hey, it's going to be 30 days, there's always a few.
Yes, that's so true. I did have a couple. Luckily, I was able to appease them. But yes,
There's
I'm like, it
always
says it
like
so many places. It says it on social media. It says it on the website. It says it on your order confirmation. It says, I was like, please read, 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 read. But yeah, I mean, yeah, luckily, yes. But that was a thing. I was like, oh my God, what if we scare off all these people? And, it's, yeah, a
but you
lot of things.
survived.
Yes,
Like you made
yes.
it, you
Made
know?
it through so far.
Right, so far, right. I mean, we're still in it. We're still in the pandemic, but so far, you've made it, which is
Yeah.
really amazing. So maybe just kind of like wrapping up for the listeners out there who may have a product-based business like you and they are struggling, right? They're just like, I don't know how I'm going to get through another day. Any advice you have for them? Please kind of give them any of your knowledge, what has worked for you and what has gotten you through this time period.
That is a great question. I think one of the things so what I did, because I have been in that place, I've 100% been in that place where I was like, I don't know that I can do this for another day. This is so hard and so challenging and so scary and overwhelming and all of those things. And one of the things I did was two things I did. One was wrote down why I do what I do,
Mm,
why I'm here, what I think my purpose is here, what I think the purpose of the business is. And I wrote that on a giant post it, like one of those really big ones, and I stuck it on my wall. So I have to look at it every single day.
mm,
And the other thing was, what are the core values of, again, what we do, why we do what I think are important. I also wrote those on a big post it that I look at every single day.
mm.
And those two things have really helped a lot. And then also giving myself some slack and a break, and
Yeah.
not like constantly being like, you need to work all the time, or if you don't hustle right now, the whole thing's going to fall apart. Probably not true. And allowing myself some space to like read for
Yeah.
pleasure, not for work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, listen to a podcast that I like, listen to some music that I like, watch a movie that I like, or a show that I've been interested. Cook something that I'm excited to cook. Really trying to remind myself to take care of myself, because if you're
Mm-hmm.
not in a good like space, or you don't feel cared for, or you're in burned out, it's almost impossible to keep pushing yourself forward, or you're just
Mm.
going to push yourself further into burnout.
Right.
And so, and I'm not saying all of those things are easy and like this just like flipped on. Some days are still really hard, but I try and remind myself, like, I am here to help people have better daily routines. I want people to feel cared for, to feel nourished, to feel satisfied. And that's how, and I want that to be how they start their day, in the shower, putting on the lotion, or going to bed at night. Like, that's what I want. And so that helps keep me going when I'm like, oh my God, what?
Like this is
I
what
have
is going on
another
here.
delay. I have another shipping delay. I cannot get oh my gosh, I'm just going to crawl under my desk and curl up. And I'm like, nope, nope, not today. Not today. Maybe later. But I think that's the thing, is I think I don't like just banding about self-care as a thing, but like really truly figuring out what it is that like nourishes you or builds you up or energizes you, or that's in, and making sure you're making space for that alongside with thinking about why you're doing the business that you're doing. And also what you and I talked about earlier is for some people, maybe is the clarity of this is that it's not the right thing for you. And maybe it's something else. Maybe you can shift your business into something else, or maybe you need to be doing something else. But
It's like we talked about a little bit beforehand, right? But this might be a time for them to really do an audit and figure
yeah,
out, do I keep going? And if I do, I need to make any changes, or is it time for me to let this go? What really makes sense for my life right now?
yeah, exactly. I think what I had said to you is like being back in the throes of having to do all the things, trying to imagine, could I do this for how
Yeah.
long? And how long could I really do this for? And what does that mean? What do I need to get rid of? Or what do I need to let go of? Or what do I need to change?
Yeah. Mm. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I mean, I think you gave people like some good practical advice. And for the folks out there, know that you're not alone. I love too, Alana, that you have a group of people that you can lean on and talk to. And so I would also add to your list is finding your people, right? Somebody like a group of people who are, within your same industry or trying to do what you're trying to do, so you guys can talk about how to make it through this very weird time. It's like you need to have those conversations with like-minded folks.
Such a good point. I thank you for bringing that up. I can't believe I didn't say that. Yeah, I have a group that I meet with almost every single week. It's like on the calendar every week of my business. Two meetings. I don't always make it to both, or, but it has been invaluable. I don't think I would have made it this far without either of those groups of people. Because it's true, you need to know that you're not alone. And you also need sometimes we're better at, because we're not emotionally in the businesses of other people,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we have a better ability to see like either bigger picture or break apart little things and help figure things out. I feel like I always feel that way. I'm always like, oh, I can help you with this thing. And then when I talk about my own business problems and someone else has a thing, I'm like, oh my gosh, of course. Because you're so
Right.
deep and thick into my own stuff that it's hard sometimes to see what the answer, but having those people to lean on and rely on, I mean, it really, yeah. Thank you for that. Is
I
such
love
an important add on to this. Is you got to find your group of people and business people too. I think that's such an important added piece is so that you can all share. You're all going through similar, if not exactly the same things, some similar stuff.
it. Well, please let people know where they can find all the amazing Etta and Billie goodies.
Of course, we are on the World Wide Web at ettaandbillie.com, and that's all spelled out. So think Etta James, Billie Holiday, even though that's not who my business is named after. It's actually after my grandmother's, but it's ettaandbillie.com. And we have an array of natural body care products. They're all handmade here in San Francisco. Oh my gosh, I was just about to say San Francisco. Can you
I
believe that? Oh my gosh, guys. By San Francisco, I mean Ventura.
know.
So they're made in California.
I
And
know,
then you
just
can,
like Callie, right?
it's like an auto thing. Wow. And then, of course, you can find us on social, same Etta and Billie. And that's on Instagram, on Facebook, on Pinterest. We're there. I'm talking about stuff. I've been trying to do some lives of some soap production. So you can go back and see,
Ooh.
I think a couple of, I saved them as IGTV so you can actually watch the whole thing. Some of them are long, and I apologize because,
Oh, but people who love it, they'll eat it up. They
oh,
won't
they'll watch
care.
it. So go ahead, go check it out. But anyway, oh gosh, thank you so much for having me back. It has
Yeah,
been such a
thank you
pleasure.
for just sharing your story. I know it's like a weird and just a different kind of time. There's like good and bad, but thanks for sharing all the things.
Well, thank you. I appreciate this, and I appreciate you like having this space to talk about these. And so it feels very cathartic.
Well, what did I tell you guys? What an episode. I think it just goes to show like with hard work, determination, and believing in yourself, you can get through anything. There's going to be some dips, turns, and curves, but you just have to figure out how to make it work. And I feel like Alana has done that. So kudos to Alana. And Alana, thanks again for just sharing all of your challenges and just being upfront and honest with all of us so we can kind of learn from what you've done. Appreciate that. And I also just want to say for the people out there, because I've emailed or DM'd some of you guys personally, I know some of you guys are really struggling right now, and know that you just have to get through this little bit. And it might feel like the end of the world and that you're not going to get there, but don't give up. Just keep going. You will get past this. You just have to keep going. All right, guys. Please subscribe wherever you're listening. Rate me 5 stars if you're on Apple Podcasts, and please give me a thumbs up on YouTube. I love any comments you give on YouTube. You guys have been leaving a lot of comments on YouTube lately, so thank you. You can also leave comments on the show notes themselves, which is in this case, nachesnow.com/119. Also, just know that my gift guide is out. So if you want to check out Nache's favorite things instead of Oprah's favorite things, remember to go over to nachesnow.com/2020 holiday to see all the cool stuff you can buy your favorite people. All right, take care.